Alright, let's get this show on the road. How are y'all? This is Plush Gibson here. This video is very simple, it's very to the point. It's entitled, Stop Blaming Everyone Else. Stop blaming in general. Stop the fucking blaming. Alright? We're getting to why, from an occult, energetic mind state, or mindset, why it actually causes more problems than it solves, because it solves no problems. So, I hope everyone's having a wonderful moon day. Shout out to the moon, shout out to Luna, right? The lunar goddess. Now, I'm going to start by reading from this book that I haven't read this in a while, but this is a book called Training the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness. It's a book by Chogyam Trungpa. See? Chogyam Trungpa. And it's based on 59 slogans known as Lojong slogans, which were created by a Buddhist teacher named Atisha. Early, I gotta look this up. It was either 500-ish BC or 500-ish AD. Probably the latter, because it was after Buddha. So, oh, that's cool. Look what happened. This fell from the tree and landed in the book like that. Yeah, that's when you know you're on the shits. And shit like that happens. And shit like that is happening more and more to me, so I know I'm going in the right direction. That seems simple, but that was a 1 in a million for it to fall off the tree and land in the inside cover of the book. So, cool shit. I'll use that as a bookmark. Anyways, so these slogans were created as a way to, as the title of the book would suggest, to train the mind and cultivate loving kindness, right? It's to break down the ego, and also open your heart with compassion. So, there's many different commentaries on this. And Chogyam Trungpa is it's actually the only commentary I've read on these slogans. But there's other commentaries out there that you can read about these slogans. So, the 12th of these slogans is one that, as soon as I read it, I was like, I learned about these maybe 10 years ago? Yeah, probably about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. This one has always stuck with me. It's one of the few ones I can recall just instantly, just in my mind, as soon as the situation comes up that reminds me of it, or makes me think about it. And obviously, we're talking about blame, so it has to do with blame. And the slogan is simply, drive all blames into one. That's it, drive all blames into one. And it's a few pages, I'm actually going to read this whole thing. Oh, we're going to get some reading in. Because we need to drive all blames into one. And if you haven't figured it out, the one is you. The one isn't your neighbor, the one isn't your daddy and your pappy, your mammy and your pappy. The one is you. So, again, this is from this book. Oh, that's my bookmark. It flew out, but that was still very cool that it happened. Okay. This slogan is about dealing with conventional reality, or kunzop, which is Tibetan. No matter what appears in our ordinary experience, whatever trips we might be involved in, whatever interesting and powerful situations, we do not have any expectations in return for our kindness. When we are kind to somebody, there are no expectations that there will be any reward for that. Let's just start there, right? Drive all blames into one means that all the problems, all the complications that exist around our practice, realization, understanding are not someone else's fault. All the blames always start with ourselves. A lot of people seem to go through this world and actually make a quite comfortable life by being compassionate and open, even seemingly compassionate and open. They seem to get along in this world, yet although we share the same kind of world, we ourselves get hit constantly. We get blamed, we get into trouble, emotional problems, financial problems, domestic relationship, and sociological problems are happening all the time. What is playing tricks on us? A popular phrase says, "Don't lay your chip on me." Interestingly, trips are laid on us, but not by anybody. We decide to take on those trips ourselves, and then we become resentful and angry. We might have entirely the same lifestyle as somebody else. For instance, we could be sharing a room with a college mate, eating the same problematic food, sharing the same shitty house, having the same schedule and the same teachers. Our roommate manages to handle everything okay and find his or her freedom. We, on the other hand, are stuck with that memory and filled with resentment all the time. We would like to be revolutionary to blow up the world, but who did that to us? We could say that the school teacher did it, that everybody hates us and they did it. But why do they hate us? That is a very interesting point. The blame for every mishap that happens to us is always directed naturally to us. It is our particular doing. That is not just a purely Mahayana wishy-washy thinking. You might say that what we are discussing tonight is purely Mahayana. Once we get into Tantra, we might get revenge on those people. But that doesn't work. I would request you not to try that. Everything is based on your own uptightness. We could blame the organization, we could blame the government, we could blame the police force, we could blame the weather, we could blame the food, we could blame the highways, we could blame our own motor cars, our own clothes, we could blame an infinite variety of things. But it is we who are not letting go, not developing enough warmth and sympathy, which makes us problematic. So we cannot blame anybody. Of course, we could build up all kinds of philosophies and think we are representing the voice of the rest of the world, saying that this is the world's opinion, that is what happens in the world. Don't you see that you should not make me suffer this? The world is this way, the true world is that way. But we are not speaking on behalf of the world, we are simply speaking on behalf of ourselves. This slogan applies whenever we complain about anything, even that our coffee is cold or the bathroom is dirty. It goes very far. Everything is due to our own uptightness, so to speak, which is known as ego holding, ego fixation. Since we are so uptight about ourselves, that makes us very vulnerable at the same time. We consequently provide the ideal target. We get hit, but nobody means to hit us. We're actually inviting the bullets. Oh! More on that later. So there we are in the good old world. Driving all blames into one is a very good idea. The intention of driving all blames into one is that otherwise you will not enter the bodhisattva path. Therefore, you do not want to lay any emotional aggressive blame on anybody at all. So driving all blames into one begins with that attitude. On that basis, you drive all blames into one again at the level of Vipassana. This involves actually experiencing the real physiological consequences of doing otherwise. For instance, you could drive all blames into Joe Schmidt, but instead you drive all blames into yourself. In this case, you actually begin to see the possibility that aggression and neurosis is expanded if you drive your neurosis into somebody else. So instead, you drive your blames onto yourself. That is the basic point. All of this seems to come under the general categories of compassion for others and having a loving attitude towards oneself, known in Sanskrit as karuna and maitri. In other words, the experience of karuna and maitri is to drive all blames into one. So this slogan is connected with the basic discipline of the Bodhisattva path, which is to refrain from any kind of ill-doing. The traditional listing of the 46 ways in which a Bodhisattva fails could be used in connection with driving all blames into one. They are connected very basically. This slogan is the essence of Bodhisattva path. Even though somebody else has made a terrible boo-boo and blamed it on you, you should take the blame yourself. In terms of power, it is a much simpler and more direct way of controlling the situation. In addition, it is the most direct way of simplifying complicated neurosis into one point. Also, if you look for volunteers around you to take the blame, there will be no volunteers other than yourself. By taking that particular blame on yourself, you reduce the neuroses that's happening around you. You reduce any paranoia existing in other people, so that those people might have clearer vision. You can actually say, I take the blame, it's my fault that such and such a thing happened and that such and such things took place as a result. It's very simple and ordinary. You can actually communicate with somebody who is not in a defensive mood since you already took all the blame. It is much better and easier to talk to somebody when you've accepted blame already. Then you can clarify the situation, and quite possibly the person you are talking to, who might be the cause of the particular clobber, would realize that he has done something terrible himself. He might recognize his own wrongdoing, but it helps that the blame, which is just a paper tiger at that point, has already been taken on by you. That helps. This kind of approach becomes very powerfully important. I've actually done it thousands of times. I've taken a lot of blame personally. A person may actually do a terrible thing based on his or her understanding of my recommendation, but that's okay. I can take it on wholeheartedly as my problem. In that way, there is some chance of working with such a person, and the person begins to go along to fulfill his actions properly, and everything is fine. That's a tip for bureaucrats. If individuals can take the blame themselves and let their friends off to continue their work or duty, that will make the whole organization work better and allow it to be much more functional. When you say, "You're full of shit, I didn't do such a thing, it wasn't me, it's you who did it. There's no blame on me," the whole thing gets very complicated. You begin to find this little plop of a dirty thing bouncing around in the bureaucracy, something like a football bouncing back and forth. And if you fight over it too much, you have tremendous difficulty dissolving or resolving that particular block, plop, slug. So the earlier you take the blame, the better. And although it is not really fundamentally your fault at all, you should take it as if it is yours. This seems to be the interesting point where the two aspects of the Bodhisattva vow, Monpa and Jungpa, desiring to enter and actually entering into Bodhisattva discipline, come together. It is how you work with your fellow sentient beings. If you do not allow a little bit of blame and injustice to come to you, nothing is going to work. And if you do not really absorb all the blame, but say it is not yours since you are too good and doing so well, then nothing is going to work. This is because everybody is looking for someone to blame. And they would like to blame you, not because you have done anything, but because probably they think, not because you have done anything, but because they probably think you have a soft spot in your heart. They think that if they put their jam or honey or glue on you, then you might actually buy it and say, "Okay, the blame is mine." Once you begin to do that, it is the highest and most powerful logic, the most powerful incantation you can make. You can actually make the whole thing functional. You can absorb the poison. The rest of the situation becomes medicine. If nobody is willing to absorb the blame, it becomes a big interrelational football. It is not even tight like a good football, but filled with a lot of glue and gooey all over the outside as well. Everybody tries to pass it on to each other and nothing happens. Finally, the football begins to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Then it causes revolutions and all the rest. As far as international politics are concerned, somebody is always trying to put the blame on somebody else, to pass the huge, overbuilt, gooey, dirty, smelly, gigantic football with all sorts of worms coming out of it. People say, "It's not mine, it's yours." The communists say it belongs to the capitalists, and the capitalists say it belongs to the communists. Throwing it back and forth doesn't help anyone at all. So even from the point of view of political theory, if there is such a thing as politics in Mahayana or Buddhism, it is important for individuals to absorb unjustified blame and to work with that. It is very important and necessary. Such an approach is neither very theistic and Occidental nor is it Oriental, but it is possible to do, which is one of the interesting points about non-theism. If you are in theistic discipline, you don't actually take the blame. Supposedly, this guy up in the sky with a beard and big nose says that when you're right, so fight for your right. When you're wrong, just repent. You should do your duty and all that. Alright, I gotta figure out what's going on with this camera, why it stops after 10 minutes. I forgot about that. So, I'm not sure why I left off, but I'm just gonna start where I think I left off. You can freak out and say, "Do you mean to say that I should take the blame for somebody else? I should get myself killed for that?" You don't have to go so far as to do that, but you can actually accommodate that much blame. You can do that. Usually with any problems at all that might occur in life, political, environmental, psychological, or for that matter, domestic or spiritual, you always decide to blame it on somebody else. You may not have a particular individual to blame, but you still come up with the basic logic that something is wrong. You might go to the authorities or your political leaders or your friends and demand that the environment be changed. That is your usual way of complaining to people. You might organize a group of people who, like yourself, blame the environment. You might collect signatures for a petition, give it to some leader who might be able to change the environment. Or, for that matter, your complaint might be purely individual. If your husband or wife is in love with somebody else, you might ask him or her to give up his or her lover. But as far as yourself are concerned, you feel so pure and good. You never touch yourself at all. You want to maintain yourself 100%. You're always asking somebody else to do something for you on a larger scale or a smaller scale. But if you look very closely at what you're doing, it becomes unreasonable. Whoa. My jacket just fell off there. That's it. Sometimes, if he is brave enough, your husband might say to you, "Isn't there some blame on your side as well? Why don't you have also join in and do something about it?" Or if your wife is brave enough, she will tell you that the situation might have something to do with both of you. If your spouse is somewhat timid and intelligent, you might say both of us are to blame. But nobody says it is you who has to change. Whenever anybody does say it's your problem, not anybody else's, you don't like it at all. We have a problem with relative bodhicitta here. The text says drive all blames into one. The reason you have to do that is because you have been cherishing yourself so much, even at the cost of sacrificing somebody else's life. You have been cherishing yourself, holding yourself so dearly. Although sometimes you might say that you don't like yourself, even in your heart of hearts, you know that you like yourself so much that you're willing to throw everybody else down in the drain, down in the gutter. You're willing to do that. You're willing to let somebody sacrifice his life, give himself away for you. And who are you anyway? So the point is that all blame should be driven into oneself. The slogan is the first slogan connected with the viewing your whole life as part of the path of relative bodhicitta. The slogan does not mean you should not speak up. If you see something that's obviously destructive to everybody, you should speak out. But you can speak out in a form of driving all blames into yourself. The question is how to present it to the authorities. Usually you come at them in an aggressive, traditionally American way. You've been trained to speak for yourself and for others in the democratic style of the Lord of Speech. You come out with your placards and complaints, we don't like this. But that only solidifies the authorities even more. There could be a much better way of approaching the whole thing, a more intelligent way. You could say, maybe it's my problem, but I personally find that this water doesn't taste good. You and your friends could say, we don't feel good about this drinking water. You can be very simple and straightforward. You don't have to go through the whole legal trip. You don't have to use the Law of Speech approach of making public declarations of all kinds. Freedom for all mankind or anything like that. Maybe you could even bring along your dog or your cat. I think the whole thing can be done very gently. Obviously there are social problems, but the way to approach that is not as I, a rightful political entity, or as me, one of the important people in society. Democracy is built on the attitude that I speak out for myself, the invincible me. I speak for democracy. I would like to get my own rights, and I speak for others' rights as well. Therefore, we don't want to have this war. But that approach doesn't work. The point is that people's experience of themselves could be gathered together rather than just having a rally. That is what you need to, that is what you do in sitting practice. In an extreme case, if I happen to find myself in the central headquarters where they push the button that could blow up the planet, I would kill the person who was going to push the button for the bomb right away without any hesitation. I would take the delight in it, but that is slightly different from what we are talking about. In that case, you are dealing with the threshold of power of society altogether. In this case, we are simply talking about how we can collectively smooth out this world so that it can become an enlightened society. Creating an enlightened society requires gentle cultivation of that nature. So again, this is Training the Mind, Cultivating Love and Kindness, Chakra. Great book, highly recommended. Just pick a slogan every day and, work on it. And yeah, so, drive all blames into one, huh? Now, I haven't read that in a while. And, there's some things that, I don't say disagree with that he wrote. But I just look at it differently now. After I don't know the last time I read that whole thing, maybe it was, a few years ago. But, I'm really looking at things from a occult perspective. This is why I wanted to get into blame. Because, man, just a thing that happens now when people are talking to me about something like, oh, how was your day? Once people start getting into like a blame mindset, all I can hear and all I can think in my head is like, they're sounding so human right now. They are sounding so just disempowered right now. And, I usually keep that part of it to myself, but I try to make a point to turn that energy around to this person when it happens. Right? I don't directly say like, stop blaming. But I'm saying that right now. Stop blaming. Because let's look at it like this. If energy is is never destroyed, right? It only transforms. That blame energy, first of all, it's directed towards the person. You're just powering up that other person, right? And secondly, you're just giving away your own power. You're just giving away your own energy for free, just because you were annoyed. I understand that there's things, I'm empathetic to shit happening and the reality of shit happens, which is occasionally our experience here on Earth, Earth. But we have to, you know, he said something interesting, and I'm like, ooh, let's talk about that. Well, let me go back. He said something very interesting. By the way, the next slogan is also one of my favorites. It's be grateful to everyone. Or also known as contemplate the great kindness of everyone. That's another good one. Anyways, hold on. Okay. Since we are so uptight about ourselves, that makes us very vulnerable at the same time. We constantly provide the ideal target. We get hit, but nobody means to hit us. We are actually inviting the bullets. And this is why I wanted to bring this up. If you are always a victim, if you are always, people are always doing this to me. You know, people are always treating me like shit. You're creating an energy field where people are always going to treat you like shit. Because that is what you're declaring. Your subconscious mind is like, oh, word? Oh, you're a victim? Oh, people are always doing this to you? Alright, let's go. Alright, loud and clear, I got it. Right? Because our subconscious mind doesn't understand that you're venting, but it's just hearing that you're saying, yo, this is your reality. So your subconscious mind is like, oh, that's their reality? Alright, well, more of the same. You're inviting these bullets, you're inviting these slaps, you're inviting these people cutting you off. I was thinking about this earlier when I was like, yeah, I should do a video about this today. Not very often do people cut me off. And I'm just a driver like anybody else. I'm on the same roads as anybody else. So if people are always cutting you off, are you magnetizing a reality where people always cut you off? Where when someone does cut you off, where I'm like, oh, people always do this to me. What the fuck? People are always cutting me off. That piece of shit, right? This is always happening. This happened yesterday. This happened earlier, right? What kind of reality are you creating with that line of thinking, with that line of feeling? And listen, you get cut off. You're like, oh, you know, like, now when people do like just wild things while I'm driving, I'm just like, oh, I just, like, listen, I'll occasionally do wild things while driving, but I keep them limited, you know, to certain situations, right? And now, if I see someone doing something wild, I just like, oh yeah, like, yeah, good job. Like what am I gonna do? Like, what am I gonna be like? Oh no, blah 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 blah. You know, I'm gonna get into that. Like, they shouldn't do that. Why are they doing that? Well, I know I do wild things too. First of all, you know, so that's one. And two, who fucking cares? You know, it's like that has nothing to do with me. Not my flying monkeys, not my circus. It's one of my favorite phrases now. Not my flying monkeys, not my circus. I'm fine. The car didn't hit me. Didn't hit anybody. We're fine. Yeah, okay, maybe they broke some traffic laws, but who fucking cares? Right? And so the more you invite these bullets, these cutoffs, these insults, these offenses, the more they'll happen. Or the more your mindset is fixated on, this is always happening. Like, think about it in your life. Hold on, we'll take a timeout because this is about to stop. T for timeout. Okay, we're back. I just have to catch it before it stops me mid-sentence. And it's like, what? So think about this. Think about all the things that you blame other people for, right? That you externalize in your life. Well, I would have gotten that job, but, you know, my boss hates me. Or I would have gotten the promotion, but, you know, HR has it in for me. You know, when I hear these things, I just think one thing now. I just think one thing when I hear people saying, people aren't doing this, or someone did that to me. Here's what I hear. You're saying, oh, I'm not in control of my reality. Oh, I'm not in control of my mind. That's what I hear now. Because that's what I understand now, and that's what I'm turning around in my own mind and working on in my own mind. Where if this is happening, then it's like, yo, dude, something's going on in your minds. You need to work on that. because that is just a projection of what's going on in your mind, that thing that came up. And sometimes, lots of times, it's not your conscious mind, it's your subconscious mind. So, just so we're clear, going forward, if you start complaining to me, if you start blaming someone on me, I'll be empathetic, I'll be sympathetic, I'll be kind and understanding about what you're telling me. But at the end of the day, I'm going to think in my back of my head, and you should be too, how did I magnetize this to happen? With my own mind. And if you want to relinquish all your power and say, all these things happen to me, go ahead, relinquish your power. You will have a life full of suffering. You will be at the whims of everything and everyone because you're relinquishing your power. You're saying, oh, it's not me. It's not me controlling my reality. It's all these other people controlling my reality. All right, that's what you want to believe. That's what you can believe. I don't really fucking care. I'm just putting these PSAs out there to just shed some light on these issues. And blame is a huge issue because you're saying that I'm not in control of my mind and reality. That's all you're saying. That's what you're saying. You know, if people are being that shitty to you, and let's say you're an adult, let's say you're not a child, if people are being that shitty to you, stop talking to them. Don't hang out with them. Like, no, but, no. If they're being that shitty, stop interacting with them. Stop giving your energy to them. Stop saying their name in terms of, they did this and they did that. It's very simple. I don't hang out with people that I don't align with anymore. It's not to mean if I saw them, I'd feel some type of way, but it's just, I understand I'm moving in a certain direction, and, you know, that's fine. But I'm not going to spend time with somebody and resent it, and later be like, psh, man, you know, they don't get it. Man, this nigga, like, you know, I'm not going to do that. That is not what we're going to do. We're going to spend time with people I'm going to spend time with people who I align with. And, you know, I just want to put it out there. Stop that blame shit. Stop that blame shit because you're just creating more of the reality of what you don't want. Here's something that I was thinking about earlier when I was meditating. If we were working somewhere, or, you know, just have to be working somewhere. If, let's say we go for a grant. You know, there's lots of artists out there. Shout out to the artists I know. And we get the grant. Are we going to be like, yo, that person over there, they helped me get the grant? No, I mean, aside from the organization setting up the parameters to get the grant and, you know, people who made the decision, put that aside, right? That's negligible at this point. But are you going to be like, oh, I got this grant because of this random person, like, you know, at the park? I got this grant because of my friends? I mean, maybe there'd be factors why you got the grant that are outside of you, but the biggest factor is you. The biggest factor of why you got that grant is your own mind and your own heart, right? But unless we're like really down on ourselves in terms of self-esteem, we're generally not going to do that. If you get a promotion and you're like, oh yeah, it was my coworker that got me that promotion, you're like, no, it was my hard work and my, you know, my abilities and my skills that got me this promotion. That's why I got it. And, you know, for good things, we don't externalize it the way we do for bad things. So we can't have it either way. Either everything is happening because of something outside ourselves, or everything is happening because of what's going on inside of ourselves. It's not going to be either or. It's going to be one or the other, you know, and there could be factors outside of ourselves that influence our inside reality that leads to a different outside of reality. There's you know, back and forth in that regard, but everything that is generated in your reality that comes across your desk, as I like to put it, is from your own mind, and it's from your own heart, from your own subconscious mind, and it's from the symbols that are in your mind, and all that sort of shit. So, please stop blaming, because you're just creating more realities that you don't want. Right? When a situation happens that you don't like, recognize that you don't like it, And visualize the reality you want. Oh, when I'm driving, I like when it's just clear and people are driving just safely. And, just keep it positive. Don't be like, they're not cutting me off. You're just saying cutting off, right? Say like, oh yeah, I just feel so relaxed when I drive. Everyone just gives me space. It's just such a beautiful thing. Focus on that, because in those moments when you're really annoyed, when you really want to go off, those are the moments where just all that energy can be harnessed in a different way. All that energy can be channeled in a different way. The more mindful of it we are when it happens. You have to start catching yourself when you start spinning, right? I think one of the most important things I've understood recently is like you have to, like Bill O'Reilly when he had that show, he called it the no spin zone, right? And I'll use that in the sake of you can't allow your mind to start spinning negatively. Like you just have to stop. Whatever you got to do to stop that shit, you got to stop that. You're just creating a tornado of bullshit that's going to come your way from the more spinning. It's just further activating the thing. Like, yeah, they're coming off. And this reminds me of the other day when this happened. And then this. And then last year. And then it's like, before you know, you've been thinking and magnetizing, attracting all this shit for 20, 30 minutes, right? Imagine if for 20, 30 minutes you just talked about like, man, I love when I drive and it's all so wonderful and just people are just driving so wonderfully and it's all beautiful and people let me in like, oh, after you, and then like I let somebody else in and then someone like beeps like, oh yeah, like this, and it's all love, right? Work on that for 20 or 30 minutes, not all the bullshit. So is it case in point or case and point? I think case in point. Case in point, let me just wrap this up. Stop blaming. Start forgiving. Start forgiving more. Start forgiving yourself more. Start forgiving yourself like, I forgive myself for magnetizing a reality where people cut me off all the time. I forgive myself for magnetizing a reality where I don't feel good about my body. Just start there. Start to forgive yourself for these realities you've created. Right? And, just stop the blame game. Stop the blame game, folks. This is part of the reason why I have very, very limited social media-ing. I'll post videos, I'll post random things every once in a while. But man, I don't want to absorb all the blame. Because me seeing more blame makes me think of more things to blame. I just don't want to see that shit. I don't want that programming in my mind. I'll keep all that blame shit. So, stop all the blame. If you need any help with that, I will give you all the exercises and practices to work on your own blaming and forgiveness and all that sort of stuff. But, have a wonderful day. I guess no but was needed. Just period. Have a wonderful day. Drop the blame. Stop. Just make it seem like you're not a god or a goddess. Because that's what you're doing when you're blaming. You're basically declaring to the universe, well, I'm not controlling my reality. I'm not a god. I'm not a goddess. It's their fault. They're the god over me. That's what you're saying when you blame. You're saying that person has more power over you than yourself. All right. Bye. Bye.